That's what you need to do when you search for your mentor, somebody who is currently where you want to be and who has recently been where you are now. And again, recently can be within 2 years, but it can't be like a decade, because guess what? They can't resonate with where you are right now. It's been too long and things have changed. The world changes and it's changing faster than ever.
Welcome to the Cleaning Up Podcast, Millionaire Secrets of the Home Services Industry. Brought to you by me, Ron Holt, CEO and founder of Two Maids and a Mop, America's fastest growing cleaning company. I get a chance to sit down with home service industry pros and other entrepreneurial leaders so they can share their stories, their insight, their experiences. It's so much fun. You're going to learn so much. You're going to be inspired to take your small business into a national brand just like I did. Let's jump right into the interview. We've got an exciting episode for you today. Today is the very first Cleaning Up episode, Millionaire Secrets Inside the Home Services Industry. We've had more than 75 interviews with authors and entrepreneurs and business coaches over the last year and a half within the Two Maids and a Mop format. But today is sort of a rebirth, and I couldn't think of a better way to be reborn than talking to today's guest. So today is none other than John Lee Dumas, otherwise known as JLD, the host of the most popular and most cool podcast there is when you're a nerdy entrepreneur like myself. Entrepreneurs on Fire. He's had more than 100 million listens, 3,000 5-star reviews. He's interviewed Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, Tim Ferriss, you name it, all the rock stars in the entrepreneurial and business world. And today he's here on our podcast. So JLD, welcome to the show, man.
Hey, brother, come on. That was a little bit of a humble brag because let's be honest, you were one of those rock star entrepreneurs that I've interviewed. So put yourself in that category of the Tony Robbins, of the Gary Vaynerchuks, of the Tim Ferrisses. And yes, you are one of the 3,000 amazing guests that I've interviewed over the past decade that has amassed over 100 million listens, over 1.4 million monthly listens to date. And man, life is good, brother.
Yes, it is. And you're down in beautiful Puerto Rico, I'm assuming.
I'm in Puerto Rico. It is truly paradise, brother. And let me just tell you, things change when you get to keep the money you make. They really do.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about that here in a minute because that's one of the more interesting parts of your story, in my opinion. All right. So one of the things that I'm super excited about talking about is your new book. JLD is the author of several books, but one of his, the one that's upcoming here just shortly in the next few weeks is called The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And what's so cool about it is all those 3,000 people, all those entrepreneurs that JLD's had an opportunity to talk with and get to know, he's learned so much. You know, he gives all this information and content out, and it's for people like me and all the other entrepreneurs, but he also gets to soak up all that information, and he's soaked it all up, and he's pushing it out, and he's giving it away to all the other people who want to read this book. So I can't wait to talk about this book because, again, for an entrepreneurial nerd like myself, I just eat books up. And so I'm super pumped for it to go live here in a few weeks.
Well, I think that really speaks to your success because when it comes to books, I mean, it's unbelievable. You can literally look at a book like my book. It's 273 pages. You know, if you sat down and just read it, it would take you, 3 to 5 hours to read. It took me a decade to acquire the knowledge that I put into that book. It took me a decade and thousands of hours of conversations learning from the brilliant entrepreneurs that I've interviewed to come up with the 17 core foundational principles that make up this roadmap in the common path to uncommon success. And you get that for like $25 for like 5 hours of your time. And it's like, that's why books are amazing. They're the cheat code. They're the fast forward button. Use them. Everybody that I've interviewed, by the way, can point to a book that said, this is what spurred me to my success. So listen, success leaves clues. Read a book.
You know, I heard that in high school and in college and never took that advice until I left the world where you're supposed to read. Such a weird journey, you know?
So weird.
All right. So this entire book's about how to create success. And there's 17 different steps. We're going to go through a few of those with you if you've got the time to do that today. But before we get to the steps, I'd like to know just how you define success in general. Like what does success mean for you and for others that are going to read this book?
Listen, it's a great question because, just like you, it didn't sink in to actually read books at a younger age. It doesn't sink into other people to actually sit down and maybe for the first time in their life, Like literally actually think about what success means to them. Because you have so many people that do this, unfortunately. They're just like, hey, I see what Ron's doing. I see what JLD's doing, or person X, Y, or Z. I'm going to become a pale, weak imitation of those people. And of course they don't succeed. Why would they? I mean, nobody wants a pale, weak imitation of other people. What we need in this world is you within your big idea, is you on fire. So like, what is my version of success? It's waking up in the morning, doing what I want, where I want, with whom I want to do it with. Guess what? It's not running a $10 million business, because I don't. I run a $2 million business, and I run a $2 million business for 8 years in a row, net profits, keeping all the money that I make. So, do I want to grow a business 10x, 100x the size of my current business, which is 3 people? No, because I have the exact lifestyle that I want. I have something that a lot of people never get to, which is enough. I truly have enough, because I've defined what my success is. And guess what? Some people, let's even throw in Gary Vaynerchuk here. He runs a 900 person company. Guess what? He wants to. That's his big idea. That's his joy. That's his zone of fire. What's yours? Yours may be somewhere in the middle. It may be something completely different. But for God's sake, sit down and at least once in your life, create what your idea of success is. It's so key.
Yeah, I tell that to my little boy, 9-year-old son, to our franchisees across our network. Everyone's got a different idea. And I feel like there's this almost misconception of what success is, because let's face it, there's only one Jeff Bezos, there's only one Warren Buffett, and, power to them, all greatness to them. But the reality is very few people are going to be the top, and so if your chase is to be Jeff Bezos, there's a high likelihood you're going to be disappointed in everything, and all the journey, the results of the journey, everything. So I feel like there's almost this misconception, maybe even lie, that a lot of the experts have been telling us over the years.
It's a lie, brother. It is such a lie. The lie is this, though. I want to get a little more granular. It's that the path to success is complicated, or it's secret, or it's hidden. But guess what? I have the key for $1,997.97. Like, no. Do not listen to those so-called experts. By the way, there are amazing experts out there, and they're giving amazing value, and you should listen to things that they say, because they're doing amazing things out there. A lot of them are writing books, and guess what? Those books, again, unbelievable value. And that's what I want you to focus on. You need to understand that the path to your version of uncommon success, it's a common one. It's a common one. And believe me, these 3,000 plus successful entrepreneurs that I've interviewed over the decade, they've taken this very common path. They all share these very simple, core, foundational principles. And believe me, when you look at this table of contents and you see the 17 steps and you see the 17 foundational principles, you'll be like, well, that's not rocket science, because it's not. It really is not. But unfortunately, common sense is not common practice. And listen, if you want to just have some common sense, if you want to just follow the common path, the proven path, this is the book for you.
Well, you teased those steps a little bit there. So why don't we kind of jump into that? I know there's so much content there that it's very difficult to boil this down into a 5-minute brief. But if we could talk about briefly those 17 steps, and then kind of dig into a few as well as we go through this interview. Kind of tell the audience what your thoughts are there, and just a real, again, brief of what this 17-step roadmap looks like for you and others that want success.
Yeah, well, listen, if you want to just go through and read exactly what every single step is, all you need to do is visit uncommonsuccessbook.com. I have the table of contents. I have the prologue. I have the first chapter. It's all free for you to just go through, scroll through, check it out. All 17 steps are listed out right there, chapter by chapter by chapter. Let's go over some specific ones, and we'll do as much as you want to do. I mean, we'll have some fun here, but let's just start at the beginning. Chapter 1. Most people, Ron, are going to die, literally die, without ever having done this step, which is step 1 of the 17-step roadmap. They're going to die never having identified their big idea. They are literally going to never even have taken the time to sit down and say, what does even like my personal big idea look like? What does my zone of fire look like? What we need more of in this world are people living their zone of fire. What we need more of in this world are people living their big idea every single day. We need less of people being pale, weak imitations of other people. We need less of people being miserable, getting up and driving to a job they hate every day. We need you identifying your big idea, but that's not enough. Just your big idea. And I won't go into super details why, although there are some details why. You have to move on to step 2 at this point, which is discovering your niche. What this means is that within your big idea, there is an underserved market, and actually we could even talk a little bit about how Ron's done that amazingly in his business. Like, he had a big idea, but then he niched down. And this is what's so powerful. There's a void that needs to be filled within your big idea that's being underserved. What is that unbelievable opportunity that you can fill that nobody else is currently filling satisfactorily? That is you taking step 2, discovering your niche. And real quick, what that looked like for me, and then maybe Ron, you can talk a little bit about, what that looked like for you, identifying your big idea, then discovering your niche was, hey, I wanted to podcast. That was my big idea. There were thousands and thousands of podcasts. Now there are millions, but this is back in 2012. There were thousands. So then I was like, okay, well, let me niche down into business podcasts. Okay, there's hundreds of business podcasts. I don't want to mess with that niche. That's too big. Let me niche down again, interviewing entrepreneur podcasts, like these podcasts that were interviewing entrepreneurs. Okay, that sounds interesting. There's 7 of those. Do I really want to be the 8th best podcast interviewing entrepreneurs? No. So I said to myself, what is missing in this space? What is a void that I can fill? And in my case, it was quantity. I said, every one of these shows is doing a weekly show. And I believe there should be a daily show, 7 days a week, interviewing an entrepreneur so that I can wake up every single day with a fresh episode waiting for me with an inspiring person like Ron, like Tony Robbins, like Gary Vaynerchuk, like fill in the blank. I believe that needs to exist. So I decided to be the first daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And guess what? That made me the best daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. That made me the worst daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. That made me the only daily podcast interviewing entrepreneurs. And that's why I won. So I'd love to hear any thoughts you have on that, Ron, and as much as you want to share.
You're singing my song here, man, because I own a cleaning business. Who the heck wants to own a residential cleaning business? So, you've heard my story. We've talked about it a lot over the time we've got to know one another. I wanted to dominate the world, at least the residential cleaning world. And everyone, friends, family, everyone thought I was a complete lunatic. And, today it's easy to look back and go, yeah, you're doing it. You're on the way. And it wasn't that simple many, many years ago. And so I am, this couldn't be more appropriate. And you and I want to dominate the world. Like you want to take over the entrepreneurial podcast world. I want to take over the residential cleaning world.
Right.
But the reality is, your world could be a zip code.
Yeah.
Your world could be a subset of a demographic within a zip code. That it doesn't have to be such a big world. You don't have to be Warren Buffett, in other words, So I think everyone listening, most people listening to this are home service entrepreneurs. A lot of people are franchisees within our system. And they're thinking, well, gosh, Ron, if I wanted to dominate the world, I wouldn't have become a franchisee. But the reality is you've got your own world there that you could totally dominate. You want to be the only, whatever that only is in your community, in your city, in your market. And if you can become the only, whether you're Walt Disney or Ron Holt or JLD, that's step 1 towards greatness and success, in my opinion.
Boom, brother. Love that.
All right. Well, let's keep going, man. That was a fun exchange. Let's see what else you got here.
Got a lot of stuff going on here. Again, we've got a full 17 steps. I want to skip ahead to what is my favorite step, my favorite chapter. And this will be interesting, Ron, when I kind of get to hear your thoughts on this, because I'm kind of curious if and how this played any role in what you do. And it sounds like it did. I mean, how many episodes actually have you said you've created?
75.
Okay, so it did actually. So this will be interesting. So chapter 7, I sat down, I started writing. And I knew at this point that, listen, I'm writing about 3,000 to 5,000 words per chapter. And in fact, my average chapter ended up being 3,500 words. I just kept writing this chapter and writing. And by the time I was done, this chapter was 13,500 words just by itself. Like it literally could be a business book just by itself. And I was like, wow. And I sat back and I said, this is actually the reason why I've had such an amazing, successful run over a decade running a daily podcast. Like this is the reason. And that step is designing your content production plan. Designing your content production plan. I'm going to be honest. My content production plan was terrible when I started. Everybody's is. unfortunately, most people's content production plan is still terrible to this day. And I mean terrible. Mine's fantastic. I mean, it took me a decade to get here, but it is unbelievable. And this chapter proved it to me. I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable what we do. Sometimes I forget just what a well-oiled machine our 3-person team is and our entire business is to create such amazing content day in, day out, which, by the way, I work 5 days per month. I work really hard those 5 days, like real hard. It's packed. And then 25 days, I'm in pretty much cruise control. Like you can't get on my calendar those other 25 days.
You're in Puerto Rico. You better enjoy it, right?
That's what I'm talking about, brother. And if you saw my house and my view, you'd be like, how do you not spend every second outside? Because it's unbelievable. It is just stunning. So, I really wanted to just share with this audience, this step, designing your content production plan, is that it's okay that your content production plan is terrible. And it really is right now, believe me. And if you don't believe my words, read chapter 7, and then you'd be like, okay, now I believe John, because in comparison, mine's terrible. But the beautiful thing is I teach you step by step, over 13,500 words, exactly how to create and design your content production plan. That is my favorite step, my favorite chapter. And again, Ron had 75 episodes, prior to this, where that was part of his content production plan. But I'd love to hear more, Ron.
Look, I believe that every business, whether you are an actual entertainment business, whether you're a podcasting organization like you are, whether you're Walt Disney, whether you're Two Maids and a Mop, it doesn't really matter what business. Every business is in the entertainment business, which means they're in the content business. And so for me, it's always been something that I have enjoyed. I've enjoyed sharing my journey with other franchisees and entrepreneurs. I've enjoyed sharing some of the weakness, some of the failures that I've had. Obviously, some of the successes I've had, I've loved to share. I believe all of that content that I push out is going to come back to me. The more I give, it's always seemed to come back. So to me, yeah, I'm with you, man. You can own a cleaning business or a podcast, or be a podcast host. You better have a schedule for your content, and you better create content.
So true.
All right. So let's keep on going. One of the things I'd love to talk to you, we kind of actually skipped it a little bit, but it's one of my favorites, is find a mentor. I just think that everybody needs somebody, even if that somebody is not someone you've ever met. In my case, you may not know this. I've talked about him a couple of times in this interview already, but my guy's Warren Buffett. Now, I've never had the pleasure, the honor of meeting Warren Buffett, but I feel like I know him. I've read every book. I've read every word. I've read everything he's ever said. I've watched it 100 times. My wife and kids know who he is. They think I'm nuts. The guy has become a beacon for me whenever it's time to get going. When I hit one of those valleys that entrepreneur always hits, I always say, what would Warren do? And so that's been the guy for me. I think every entrepreneur needs their guy, whether it's their dad, whether it's their mom, or Warren Buffett.
So listen, this may be where you and I have interesting and potentially differing opinions, which is totally fine. And by the way, I think it's great to have a quote unquote virtual from afar mentor like a Warren Buffett, when you're like, okay, I need to learn some things about finances and investing. So, let me read some books or read the Warren Buffett papers or whatever it might be. But here's the thing. This is where most people go wrong. They're like, oh, I want Richard Branson to be my mentor. I want to be mentored by Mark Cuban. I want to be mentored by Jeff Bezos. And they miss the key points. Your mentor is somebody who is currently where you want to be right now. This is a person that is currently where you want to be. And I say preferably has been where you are right now within the last 18 to 24 months. I loved the fact that I found my perfect mentor, who was a successful business podcast host who was about 18 months into her journey. So she remembered what it was like to launch her business podcast recently. And not much had changed in the world at that point. So it was great that she could give me real honest lessons, real honest feedback and guidance. So guess what? I wanted to be a successful business podcast host. I went and found a successful business podcast host. That's what you need to do when you search for your mentor, somebody who is currently where you want to be and who has recently been where you are now. And again, recently can be within 2 years, but it can't be a decade, because guess what? They can't resonate with where you are right now. It's been too long and things have changed. The world changes and it's changing faster than ever. So that is, in my opinion, the way that you find your mentor.
Yeah, I can get around that. And I've got a few of those guys in my life. Warren Warren was there for me when I was a crazy little kid, 20-year-old in college. And he stuck with me since, but there's certainly some real life people in front of me that I've used as my own beacon for growth as well. All right. So you're ready to talk about the most boring and yet the most exciting word in the entrepreneurial's dictionary?
Tell me.
Systems.
It's only boring if you love repeating yourself over and over and over again. And guess what? I find that boring. I hate repeating the same tasks over and over. I find that boring. So when I create a system, I find that liberating. I find that exciting. I find that stimulating because I now get to say, wow, I just created an amazing system that's going to ensure that I never have to do the same thing over and over and over again. And that's why this 3-person team called Entrepreneurs on Fire, that again has generated over 100 million listens in the past decade, has generated over $20 million of revenue in the past 9 years, which by the way, that's, a net number that's going into like our bank account. That's not some we're a 150 person company that just, made $3 million of gross revenue last year, but our net profit was actually negative. No, this is like real money, keeping the money you make, money in the bank, lifestyle entrepreneur stuff. So this is the kind of things that I thrive on, our systems. And luckily, my right-hand woman, also my fiance, Kate, is quite the systems machine. And she's been running the systems of Entrepreneurs on Fire now for 9 years and doing a fantastic job. But what are your thoughts when it comes to systems, Ron?
Yeah, well, so here's the funny part. So we're in franchising, right? Franchising and systems almost kind of go hand in hand. That's all franchising is. When you think Subway, when you think McDonald's, it's not the burger or the sandwich that really separates them. It's how they operate the business, how they make money. And so I should be like this total systems guru. I'm not. I'm a visionary guy that when you talk about process, I almost fall asleep. But you know what I do? I keep doing what I think I'm pretty good at, and I keep creating new ideas and taking chances and screwing up. And I bring other people around me, and those guys focus on system and process, and they push forward. And so to me, that's the perfect team. When you've got someone that's the visionary that just has one dumb idea after the other, and you've got another person who can plan to test those ideas and measure and scale those ideas if they're successful. That's the winning combination for that's, at least that's what worked for me in my business.
That's so awesome.
All right. So we got to talk a little bit about your lifestyle there in Puerto Rico. There's a reason you live there, right? And so I think that's something that I don't know how many of our franchisees and other home service entrepreneurs can replicate what you've done, but it's such a cool story that I'd love for you to tell a few people about it.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but listen, I was living in San Diego, making a lot of money, millions of dollars, writing 7-figure checks to the government every year. And then at the end of the year saying, where's my money? Like, where's all my money that I made this year? Gone. And I had to find a way to legally start to lower my taxable income. And so I was snooping around and I found out about this amazing opportunity called Act 60, which allows you to move to Puerto Rico, put your business here. It's American territory. So we're not talking passports. We're not talking immigration. We're just talking you literally fly to Puerto Rico and then, rent a place or buy a home, which we did, and make this your, permanent residence at least 6 months of the year. And you pay no federal tax, no state tax, just a flat 4% tax. And once you start keeping the money you make, you never want to stop running.
I'm with you, man. One day I'm going to bring my kids and dogs and pets and hang out with you for a few weeks.
It would be the best week of your life.
All right, man. All right. So JLD, this has been a true honor. I think everyone listening to this needs to figure out a way to get this book in their hands. It's going to be live here in just a few short weeks.
Let me even make it more exciting and appealing to them. Listen, we have mind-numbingly awesome, no-brainer bonuses for people who just pre-order one copy of this book. I'm literally shipping my Freedom Journal, my Mastery Journal, and my Podcast Journal, which are 3 of my best works over the years, to your door for free. I'm shipping all 3 of these journals on me. This is a time-sensitive bonus. We are pulling this because, so many people are jumping on it. We only have so many, but that is happening. If you're in the US, outside the US, you're getting immediate access to the digital packs of all 3. And we have 4 other amazing bonuses uncommonsuccessbook.com, uncommonsuccessbook.com.
Well, JLD, you're a hero to us entrepreneurs out there, not just here in the States, but literally all across the globe, man. You're doing good work, and you provide inspiration and actual practical advice to myself, to our franchisees. I know a lot of people in our network have listened to you on a regular basis as well. So you keep doing the work you've been doing, man. You're helping a lot of people out there.
Ron, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you so much.
We'll talk again, JLD.
Boom.
Kyle Davis here from Business Development. Thank you so much for listening to the Cleaning Up Podcast. If you found this episode valuable, then please subscribe on your favorite listening platform, and please share it with your friends. If you're ever interested in going into business for yourself and purchasing a franchise, then don't hesitate to reach out. You can get a hold of me at phone number 205-870-8643, email KyleD@ineedamaid.com, or visit us online at twomatesfranchise.com to learn more.